Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Unity Through Diversity, and I'm your host, Gina. So in this special season and a special episode, we bring the readers from all over the world, and we bring this intuitive message through our guest to hopefully guide the collective navigating whatever things that are going on in their life. So today we have Nefrit, right? I got your name correct.
Yes, perfect.
And tell us a
Perfect.
little bit like where you're from and how you step into your spiritual journey. Let's start from there.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Nefrit. I am originally from Israel, and I came to the United States about 27 years ago. I went through a transformative life transformation journey over the last 5.5 years. I lived my life always feeling like something was broken with me, something was wrong with me, and I didn't know why. It felt like everything that I did required just extra untold effort on my end when other people did things that seemed to me much easier with less effort. And I always felt like something was wrong with me.
Mm.
Um, and then in 2020, I was diagnosed with severe Crohn's disease, and that kind of gave me an opportunity, an out. It was for me a way out. There's before the diagnosis and after. And at that point, I was just burnt out on a life that I felt like I couldn't do. And I lived with an undiagnosed eating disorder as well, anorexia. And when I was diagnosed with the Crohn's disease, my fear of the diagnosis itself kind of shut down my appetite, and my then undiagnosed anorexia kind of hitchhiked on that. And with feeling like a burnout of an entire lifetime that I couldn't do, I just sort of was on my way out. I just didn't want to do life anymore, really.
Mhm.
And anorexia kind of took charge, and I kept on losing weight for about 3 years. I was just starving to death, and everybody thought that I was dying from Crohn's disease, while on paper, 3 months after my diagnosis, I was actually in remission naturally. Um, but with the eating disorder, I kept losing weight, and I got to the point where I was on the brink of death. And I knew I have two little kids. I knew that if I'm not going to say something, they really be left without a mother.
Mhm.
And I rang the bell, and you know, revealed the grand secret of what was really transpiring. And from that point on, there was this big flurry of activity. I had to go to treatment for 10 months for eating disorders, leave my two kids and my husband. And I came back on the other side and triumphant, even though recovery is an ongoing process. But I knew that my purpose was to help others and help others through their recovery journey. Now, also, I forgot to mention I was diagnosed with autism, being on the
Mhm.
autism spectrum, which was really the catalyst for the transformation because I could finally understand why I felt so broken my entire
Mhm.
life. And that's what saved my life. The explanation that I wasn't broken, I was just wired differently.
Mhm.
And throughout this whole recovery journey, I started meditating and to help myself heal from the Crohn's, from the physical pain that I experienced, the emotional pain. And while I was meditating, and I've been doing this consistently for 5.5 years, I discovered how to rediscover. I'm saying this rediscover because I know that we're all coming from a divine source. So we discover the source of love. I call it love. People can call it God or Buddha, whatever they would like to call it. To me, it's love.
Mhm.
And I discovered that essence of love within myself, and that I knew intuitively was connected to a divine love. It was the same thing, that we are all coming from love, and that was really my my one tool. Is that's when my spiritual journey kind of evolved throughout this recovery journey, and discovering the divine love and the role of it in our lives and mine was a very intuitive thing, and it was really what was um, the driving force underneath this whole recovery journey. And today I want to help others um, find that love essence within themselves, that guidance of love within themselves. And I'm through very spiritual, attuning to frequency, to that frequency. I call it the love frequency, to find how to connect to love frequency. So
Yeah.
that's where I am at today, helping others with
Yeah,
that.
thanks for sharing your journey. It's sounds like there's a lot of things, within the 5 years and a half. I'm a little bit curious about, when you're looking back, definitely 2020 did a good to so many people. When there's no good or bad, it's sometimes, most intense journey, and on the other side is most beautiful realization. Myself also 2020, 2018, like, being prepared leading to 2020. 2020 was a big explode moment, right? Then you're on the healing
Yeah.
recovering, but things just doesn't happen at one day, right? So what was your life before leading to, you know, um, that moment of, like, let's say 2025 and half, probably 2019, 2020, right? So what was your life before? Do
Yeah.
you, when we being diagnosed certain things, it give us an answer of like, oh, no, I understand, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's really interesting that you're asking this question before, because for me it's kind of like there's before 2020 and then there's after. Now,
Yeah.
I know that we're here, I'm saying my recovery journey started then, but really our recovery journey starts when we're born.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's all a journey. It's a journey of learning, right? And a
Mhm.
journey doesn't really have an end point. That's what I understood. It doesn't really have a starting point, but I do have kind of like before 2020 to make it more, to organize it in my
Yeah.
head. So, as I said, I really felt that my entire life, I was just living in this dark cave, and
Hmm.
I was just operating out of fear, out of pain, self-hate. There was a lot of self-hate going on my entire life because I couldn't understand myself. And when I was diagnosed, so that up until that 2020, I just felt like a complete failure. I felt like I was just failing at being a human.
Hmm.
And at 2020, and it was kind of a big explosion to everybody because it's when the pandemic exploded. So coinciding with the pandemic, I sort of had the Crohn's diagnosis gave me a way out. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with life. I don't want to be here anymore. And really, the diagnosis of autism, which happened to me very late in life at the age of 43, along this journey, was like me living in that, in the cave, in that dark cave. And all of a sudden, there's this portal of
Hmm.
light, shining through and illuminating my entire life. It's like as though I had a life, a movie of my life
Hmm.
broadcasted before me, but only this time with subtitles toggled on. I could all of a sudden understand. So there's this big divide. And like you said, a lot of people, go through a very, very, very kind of transformative, very deep, fundamental, very painful moments in order for them to be kind of like the jumping board to get
Yeah.
to the next level of their expansion and their growth. And for me, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's thank you again. Just because a lot of time, as the work we are doing right now, right? There are a lot of rising. I don't want to say rising, like you said, the journey we started ever since we were born or being conceived, before we conceived, because
Right.
it started
Exactly.
way, 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 way back, right? So we just allow it to
Exactly.
unfolding right now, and we choose, okay, at 37 or at 42. I'm gonna, right, things gonna build up, and then you have a aha moment because there are certain things you need to fulfill. I would say, well, if it did that 15 years ago, I probably won't be the person today. I probably won't have kids. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
we have certain contracts with certain people to experience certain things, and everybody can't agree at certain points. So we decide to build that. We call it catalyst, right? And you
Exactly.
just rebirth from there. So that's why, like, a lot of time I was like, I had made a lifetime, and it's great to have those conversations to validate each other. Say, hey, yeah, well, sister, you made it, right? Now let's talk
Exactly.
about after you made it, right? And like, share with us a little bit, because today, I definitely want to have you on to share some. I'm gonna I'm the representative of collective, ask certain questions, share with us a little bit like how you channel the messaging through and from when you realize that you are channeling, right? Because
Yeah.
people channeling journey, I interview so many different people, even myself, I would not say I always have this we call drip channel. It's a dripping. I will sometimes say
Yeah.
certain things that come from nowhere, and I thought, whoa, that was deep. I never thought about that. I thought it's from me, but
Yeah.
actually it's not. And then later you realize that how to practice to be allows this kind of like maintain their channel to certain points. I don't need to do anything. They basically just embed with my energy, coming through. So share with us a little bit about how you channel and how you build your channel. And you mentioned a little bit that you are also teaching other people, right? So steps, will you share a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. I do believe we're all, very spiritual beings. We're here,
Yes, we
all
are.
spiritual beings, spiritual journey, and I feel like we all can be channelers and mediums and readers. It's just a matter of where we are in our journey. So I think we all have the ability to do that, and we're all born with that. And it's about expansion and opening up your channels in order to allow things to go. We're all channelers to go through.
Yeah.
Now, I always feel like I'm a writer, I'm a blogger, I'm a musician, and I always
Hmm.
felt like, for one, that was definitely a channeling for me. I kind of,
Yes.
when I'm in the creative mode, I feel like things are coming through me. That's one medium for me to channel my creativity, my music. But specifically regarding my more intuitive spiritual channeling, at the beginning of my healing journey and when I started meditating, I had this kind of intrinsic need to a summoning to
Mm-hmm.
be love. And I wanted to be love. I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew that I had this kind of um, fundamental need to be love. I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And I began meditating, and it was in the beginning it was kind of a challenge for me to sit for long periods, and like it is for many people. And I did whatever I could, but I kind of extended the time more and more. And as I expanded my meditation practice. And I'm a person who I don't really like to follow too many like things. I kind of learn a thing or two from other people and then I kind of go with it on my own. So
Mm-hmm.
I found my own way to meditate. And at that point, I started, this is a kind of a step by step on how I got to connecting to love essence, which
Mm-hmm.
this is when I want to, I feel like I want to teach. I want to teach other people how to find their guidance, because this is essentially what I found inside myself. I found the guidance of love source, and that I knew intuitively we all are. We are love. Love is us. We are love, and we are part of a divine love. And that divine love is us, and we are it. And we are here really at the core of our passage here on earth is to find that lesson of love. This is what I feel. And so I want to teach people how the way I did it, at least from my experience, how to find that love essence within themselves, because we all are many times looking for the external. We're looking for other people to validate us, other people
Mm-hmm.
to tell us what to do and how to go about things and how to feel better about things. But really, the guidance is inside each and every one of us. So I'm saying, yeah, I'm a teacher, but don't follow me. Follow your own guidance. You have that inside. Don't follow presidents. Don't follow leaders. You have your leader inside of you. So what I did, and it was again an intuitive process. It started from wanting to be loved, and then I started thinking about something that would make me feel, and what I'm talking about love, it's capital L, it's not like the romantic love, it's a love force, it's the highest frequency there is. So but I began by conjuring a something that would make me feel inside a feeling of love. It was a person or, my pet, whatever it is that would elicit a feeling of internal love inside myself. And I would sit, and during my meditation, I would focus, I would elicit that, I would conjure the image that would make me feel love, and I would start focusing on the internal feelings of what love meant to me. I focused on the transactions, like the physical transaction. What's happening inside of me right now? What is the mental environment that I'm in right now when I'm thinking about love? What is it that really is happening inside of me? The spiritual, the mental, the physical, all of it. And that requires observation, and I sat there and I just focused on what's happening inside of me. And I tried to capture that emotion, that feeling of love. And, in the beginning, it would take a lot of practice. I would have to do it over and over again, would conjure something in the external, an image, something that would make me feel love, and then focus on the internal and try to, it's kind of like snapshotting that essence of love. What is it that really is happening when you feel love, when you think love, when you are love? So after a while that I practiced that, paying attention to what's happening inside of me, I tried to kind of release that source of the external, let it go, and be in that love essence without any external prompt, to just bring up back that feeling that I practice recognizing in myself. And I essentially taught, and again, that took a while too, because, it's a lot of focusing and a lot of trial and error. And I taught myself how to then bring up that essence of love, that feeling of love that I experienced without any external source. And I understood that I could bring it up anytime that I wanted, if I wanted. And I practiced bringing that feeling of love, being in that space of love. And when I did it, the more I practiced, I felt that I was tapping into a source. It wasn't just inside of me. It was a source that is greater than me. It was a source that I came from, a source of love, a source of unconditional love, something that is going to, there's no hate there, there's no violence. It is the answer, it is the way of love. And I practiced that over and over again, bringing that feeling of love, that essence of love inside myself, connecting to that higher source. And the more I practiced it, I started all of a sudden feeling like these kind of buzzing on the top of my head, like electricity. And over time, I understood that what's happening is that I'm actually, I know that our brain is an antenna. It's an antenna that can kind of, hone into different frequencies. And not only it's an antenna, it's also a dial. It can also kind of put you on the right dial for a different frequency. So it can receive frequencies and it can, transmit frequencies, but it can also find the right frequency. So what was happening when I was eliciting that sense of love inside myself, I was actually tuning into a frequency of love, because love is an energy and every energy has a frequency to it. And so I'm surfing the frequency of love. And that was physical confirmation when I got those tinglies on top of my head, a physical confirmation that I was on the frequency of love, in the frequency of love, which is the highest frequency there is. It's the creation, the frequency of creation. Now, the more I, kept on experiencing that, once you know it, you don't want to unknow it. It feels so wholesome to you that there is just nothing else. Like, to me, this is it. This is all about, it's being here in the frequency of love, living out of connecting to that frequency. And so the more I connected to the frequency, I taught myself to be in the present moment, in the physical, but connected at the same time to the frequency of love. Mm-hmm. And the more I practiced it, the more I wanted to extend it to the world without any need to see outcomes or consequences. I wanted to send out love to the world, that spiritual love, that divine love. And I would send it to strangers in the street. I would send it to the trees. I would send it to anything and anyone, even to inanimate objects, because it felt to me like this is what life is all about. This is an internal reward when you're walking the way of love. You feel this amazing wholeness and you feel that you are part of everything. You feel everything. And the more I did that, I started feeling like I was being love. I wasn't just sending out love, I was becoming love. And I was like, this is it. This is what I wanted to do to begin with. I wanted to be love. I didn't know what that meant. All of a sudden it hit me, and it wasn't not long ago, years after. This is exactly what I wanted, and I didn't know how to do it. I sort of, intuitively found my way how to be love. And so
Mhm.
I want to, this is kind of my, in short, how I would want to teach people how to do it for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you hit so many parts that it sounds like you're talking about this unconditional love. The universal love is not like, it's not a romantic love or family, friends, you not even self-love is this unconditional love. You have access from your within, but this love is bigger than not say we don't want to like measure that. Is you unmeasurable, but it's also everywhere and anywhere. You just learn how to tune into that frequency. So I think
Yeah.
that's really helpful. Actually, I have questions for actually let's are you ready? Let's jump into the like channeling part because we talk about love, right? And in this world right now, the reason that I have this special series is actually want to bring more love to each everyone's life. So allow them
Yeah.
to kind of can we by because the the funny thing is when you inviting life to your life, like love to your life, you will see a lot of parts that you don't love, right? A lot of parts
Yeah.
that you don't love
Yeah.
yourself, a lot of parts you don't love your neighbor, your coworker, whoever, because there's a lot of separation and judgment there. And I think, bring
Yeah.
love in. What are like my first question is what are some intuitive message you have for the people who are now in the process? We are still in the process. It's just different process, right? Let's say they are
Right.
still at a stage of like, no, this person did this to me, that person did this to me, more of in a victimhood. Like what are
Yeah.
kind of some the intuitive message you have, in a unconditional love way, um, to shine some light on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that you asked this because just before that, I have another, an initiative that I do with a friend of mine, Aliyah Jamal, and
Hmm.
we talk about love and unity in the world. She's a Muslim. I come from a Jewish tradition. So we're kind of coming together to talk about love in a kind of separated world, um, and we talk a lot about the current events in the world that
Yeah.
are arising out of hate and out of anger and fear and hate, and in my home country, in her home country, and how to bring this unity. And we
Hmm.
just talked about this subject before. We spend life, we are, our original form, I know, is love. We are part of this spark of a divine love. And we come here to this earth to learn through these challenges how to expand and progress. And we have a free will, right? We
Hmm.
have the love, the divine love doesn't judge us. We're not uprated for what we do. We have free will, and whatever we do is not being punished. It's just choices that we make. Every opportunity, every minute in our life is an opportunity for growth. There are no mistakes. There's only moments of progression and growth. So we come here with a free will, and we can choose to walk the way of love, and we can choose the opposite way of hate and anger. But we do have a guidance. We're not coming here just without nothing, like what am I going to do? And the guidance is inside of us. And the moment when we choose of our own volition to walk the way of love, I know intuitively we expand. Not only we expand the whole. Because like you said, everything is made out of love. Everything is love. We are love. Everything around us is love. But we're here in the physical form to forget that. And to come here sort of, we're not really tabula rasa because we have all this knowledge from before. We just forget when we're interjected into this envelope, this human envelope. So we have these invitations as a human, we have a human brain, that's our software, and we experience this earthly realm through the physical. So when we're in the physical, we have a lot of invitations for fear. We have invitation to follow violence, to follow anger. Now, feeling those things is not wrong. There's no wrong or right. We're meant to feel the feelings. We're meant to feel anger. We're meant to feel jealousy, all these things that are opposite the way of love. But then comes the moment of choice. How do we want to lead? And we have the choice in every moment. And we kind of have to interject a moment of pause when we, our feelings are our compass. They tell us which way to go. So we want to feel the feelings. We don't want to, shut down the anger. We don't want to shut down that resentment. It's a very human thing to feel. We're supposed to feel those things. But then what do we do about these things? How do we want to lead in the world? So oftentimes, I would find myself, and we have the confirmation, the physical confirmation, when we are doing an act of love, when we're doing an act of kindness, we are furnished with all these feel-good hormones and neurotransmitters. We're getting rewarded for an act of kindness and love, even if it's self-kindness and an act of kindness to others. It makes us feel good. And that's a reward for us. That means that's a divine guidance saying, yep, that's your way to go, because you see, it makes you feel good when you're doing an act of kindness. So it's a kind of recognizing, what am I feeling right now? Am I feeling anger? And yeah, this person did something, they cut me off in traffic. You want to cuss them out and you want to get angry at them. And that's okay. But what do you
You
do
still
about
can
it
do it.
after you feel it?
You still can do it.
What's that?
You say you still
You
can do
can't.
it.
You still can. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But if you notice, when I started to do that, like to kind of interject a moment, like, wait a minute. Yeah, they were doing something that is unkind or therein. What do I want to do? What do I want to do about the situation? And I catch myself, and despite of what happened, I send love to this person. I'm sending them love. And that makes me feel good. Doesn't matter, if they're going to use it. I'm sure, I know it creates a difference in the ripple of the universal ripple, but it makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I choose love. I
Mhm.
send it out. I send it out to that one person who did something that is, and I choose to go in the way of love rather than getting swept in the invitation of anger.
Mhm.
And so there is a choice. There is a choice. But also, it's not to berate yourself for if you fell and you faltered and you did fall into anger, and to be kind to yourself and say, you know what, this is a human thing to do, and I'm here on a journey of learning, and it's okay to get into those, but I'm learning, and so long as you want to learn, you will.
Yeah. Okay. You talk about choice. Let's talk about choice because I think that that's very connected to the second questions that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
You know, yes, we all know we have choice. The point sometimes I realize that you don't know what you don't know. You
Yeah.
know, you don't, if you don't know your choices, like I think being a human, the most magical thing about it is that we have this brain is so beautiful. Like a lot of things, certain things you process a decade, 2 decades later, you already, one day you have this aha moment, you solve this problem and solve this equation, bothered you
Right.
for 20 years, right? So
Right.
now where is our human kindness at? Because I think, if for people to have a choice, a lot of people, let's use a very small example of when people doing the decoupling. I'm talking about the divorce, right?
Mhm.
There are one way is a very dominant way is you choose a lawyer and you fight with each other, this and that, right? That's
Right.
probably most people going that route is because our society has been conditioned us.
Right.
Now, there in the recent probably 5 years or last 7 years, myself even witnessed there's are more conscious being.
Mm.
They discovered a different way. You might heard of the word decoupling, right?
Mhm.
So I myself, I don't really use, but then for the sake of explaining, I use that D word. But
Mhm.
I use the like decoupling a lot is because I just realized that I through myself I found a different way, and nobody told me because if you never need to going through the divorce, you would not need it the other way, right? But like
Right, right.
humankind, we are like first of all, the first question is where we at, right? And if we can help people to see these trajectories energetically, where we going, why we need to go through this, and I feel like people will have more this contentment of when they facing certain things because you're not die. I mean, by the way, we all die every day. We this version of me is different from the version of me yesterday or this morning, right? So
That's right.
like we are more hold on this physical, oh, you are here, you or you this person is gone, but we actually always progressively being a different person, right? So first
Yeah,
question is where are we at, second of all, like what are something we are going through when we zoom out, because when you talk about it, we are in this physical body, right, this envelope, we
right.
have to forget a lot of things out there to be focused in this envelope. Otherwise, you probably won't even be able to do anything in this envelope because you will be distracted by all things, overwhelmed, right?
Right.
So we wanted to show people a little bit, and then okay, where you want to go, where you want to choose, and also we want to let people know there's no wrong choice per se, but it will be different experience for sure. Sometimes you take a detour, right? Sometimes reroute,
Yeah,
but
right.
eventually you will get there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I feel like it was kind of clear to me
Mm-hmm.
that there's something happening in the world. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a lot of kind of shaking and rattling. And, you know, for me personally, I'm living in the United States and there is a war in my home country that's
Mm-hmm.
been going on for 600 plus days, 600 and change.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the war, you know, I had to kind of kept on telling my family that's there in harm's way, and you know, I'm thinking always on both sides there is no right or wrong, and there's just us as human beings and souls. I don't take sides. I'm for everybody. I'm for humans and
Mm-hmm.
easing the pain of humans. But I'd say a lot of times, in order for growth to happen, we need to go through a transformation through very rattling experience. And this is how evolution happens. This is how revolutions happen. And individually, a lot of times, in order for people to grow and get to the point where they are discovering their essence of, you know, their spiritual essence, a lot of times they go through something very kind of earth shaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, yeah, you asked in the beginning. So I see humanity. And now it doesn't lessen the pain. It doesn't make the pain okay. It doesn't make hate okay. It doesn't make those acts of cruelty and violence, you know, saying, oh, okay, it's part of it. But it kind of explains, it's an explanation and kind of a point of faith and hope that there is a reason to trust in the greater picture and to trust that universal force that we all are, that there is a reason for why all of us as humans going through all this very, very challenging things all over the world, you know, wars and all these things. It doesn't make them okay. It's not condoning them, but it's saying there's a purpose. There's a
Mm-hmm.
purpose for all this pain and hate. And we are learning and we are developing. And like you said, there's no wrong or right. There's just where are we at this journey. So there is an individual journey, us as just an individual soul, and then there is a collective journey. And we
Mm-hmm.
all are developing together. And we're doing this together. We're working on ourselves while we're working on the collective. And bit by bit, by bit by bit, we are transforming. And I feel like there's a lot of kind of transformation happening right now. And I think we're going to see it. I feel that there's a lot of conscious development in consciousness. And you know, it's interesting that she said, I how do you know to even, you know, that you have a choice if you don't even know how to? And that's how I felt my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know to ask the questions. I didn't know that something was wired differently in my brain. I didn't have the information. I didn't even know to ask the question. Why
Mm-hmm.
is this happening to me? I was just, this is just it. This is just hard. I'm just broken. I messed up. I'm a mistake here.
Mm.
Um, and the diagnosis gave me it prompted me to, wow, not only understand, but to ask questions and to start digging
Yes.
in. And I just felt like I didn't even know to ask. But I think we all have our journeys. We all have these points where we get to, like you said, the aha point.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have our individual journeys, and whoever is listening to this podcast is meant, this is they were drawn to it because their soul is probably going to get something out of it. We're kind of our soul is getting to the things that we need for our development. For me, it was different things, for you, for everybody else.
Yes.
So I, I think whatever we are meant to have, we will get there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think we just, it's all about different journeys. And I also feel like, it sounds very extreme, but when we talked about unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who is a pastor, and I said, I don't subscribe to the notion of sin. I don't believe in sin because we are all here um, on a learning journey. So when our soul chooses, when we choose, not our soul, when we choose as human beings to do certain things, what I see happens when we cross back over, we're not being, punished for it, but we're just sort of asked,
You
what
have
did you learn?
consequences. Like, I see those things, because certain time, I mean, you are talking about everybody's brain is wired differently, right? So you will might have
Yeah,
certain things, then you try to find a proof to prove there's certain things you're feeling either right or wrong or this and that. And I
yeah,
just realized sometimes I'm solving my own problem, bring up that I don't even know how to explain to other people, but I'm gathering all the information to support what I'm feeling that, right? And that
yeah,
process itself is everybody is so very different in that kind of process. And sometimes, those process take a, short period of time. And sometimes what if this whole process is going to take your whole life? Time
hmm,
to even figure out, not because you realize that we were 15, 16, right, in our teenagers, you don't really understand what's the we'll talk about choices and the consequences, right? And you
right,
looking back, sometime I looking back, I was like, oh my goodness, Gina, if that one step something happened did wrong, like go wrong, I probably won't
right,
be here. Like that.
right.
But when you are in 15, 20s, you never think about this thing. This thing is later you recall this memory. You're like, oh my goodness, that was close, right? Then we
Yeah,
create, guess what? As a mother, you have two kids, I have two kids. We
right.
created our own fear. And I was not afraid at that moment. I'm now, because I have two little children. And I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my goodness, I need to have them to avoid those choices that I made. Because I see when I made those choices, some of them, they literally detour me a very different way. But also, I know on my spiritual journey, I need to go there. But the thing is, you're looking back, I
yeah,
was like, well, we actually don't want my kids to go the way. Maybe they can choose different way to experience. But sometimes you also realize that you have no control.
yeah,
Like our parents, right? My dad tried to tell me the way because he sees me to go that way. He probably already see, they probably more wise, but to us, you're like, oh, you tried to control me. No, I have to go. You say no, I will show you what it is, yes, right? And then you
yeah,
later realize 20 years later, you're like, oh, dad, actually you were right. But also there's a lot of time and say, hey, dad, actually that was not right, right? But the thing is like, what we are talking about here is like every time you make a choice, there's no right or wrong, but there does have certain consequences go with the choice. So you ask
yeah,
yourself, is that like even for myself, because I'm so living in the moment. Sometimes I get myself into big troubles, not big as bad troubles. Like sometimes I start something, didn't know how much
yeah,
energy I need to put inside, and then 2 years later, you're like, oh my goodness, I almost died by carry out this mission because my brain's okay, what's next step, next step, I don't think of 12 steps away. But sometimes
sure.
even ask myself when my boyfriend, I will ask me because we are so different. He's like, okay, so tell me, walk me through, what's gonna happen after this, what's gonna happen after that. That actually helped me to, oh, okay, that would require a lot of energy. Not say the idea is bad, but maybe this idea I will need to wait in 3 months to do that because you realize that you will not have enough fuel to, power through that. So that
Yeah.
helps, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because like oftentimes, I tell myself, I tell my kids all these things, all the lessons of love, and I'm like, when I was their age, I didn't care when anybody told me. I still did whatever, I
Yes.
did. Is it actually going to make a difference? But the thing is, it does. And
Hmm.
yes, things have consequences, but I realize at some point, and we want to protect our kids. If we're talking about
Yes.
kids, I want to protect my kids. I want to make sure that they're not,
Not getting hurt.
repeating a mistake. Yeah, they're not gonna.
Hmm.
But the thing is, at some point, so I went to treatment for eating disorders, and I mentioned that, and I
Hmm.
spent 10 months away from my kids, and it was a very, very difficult
Yeah.
experience on its own to leave them behind, but I was on the brink of death, and that was really the right thing to do. It was
Hmm.
the only thing to do.
Yeah.
And so there was a moment where I was in treatment for the last leg of the last 5 months, and I was in St. Louis, and my husband and my two kids came to visit me, and for the weekend, and we live in Maryland, and I was in Missouri, and it was a
Hmm.
long drive for them. And then I came to say goodbye to them at the parking lot. It was a very hot day, and my
Hmm.
son, who is kind of a very, very internal person, and he's not somebody who really shares his feelings much. He's kind of,
Hmm.
you know, very kind of closed off. He gave me a hug in the car, and he just didn't want to let go. And he was just really just
Hmm.
kind of, he was crying, and his body was shaking, and it was just a very, very difficult experience to see him go through this. And I just, they left, and I went to my apartment, and I stood in my apartment, and I felt like I started crying, and I felt like
Yeah.
I was the worst mom in the world. I was the worst person in the world to leave my kids, to put my kids through this experience. But as I kind of, thought about it more, and I thought about this experience, I realized that, it's not my job to take away challenges. For one, I knew it was the right thing to do. That's, I kind of gave myself, this was the right thing to do for my kids because I wouldn't have been there. But the other thing is, I cannot take the challenges away from my kids. I
Hmm.
cannot take the lessons away from them. They're
Yes.
their own soul. They have their own journey, and our stories are interwoven together. His story and my story are connected together. And my story, what I'm going through, gives his soul challenges to
Mm.
go through in order that they can expand. And his story gives me challenges so I can expand. And
Yes.
it's not my job to take those lessons away from him. My job is to walk along his side by side, with love, encourage him, and tell him I'm always there for him, and that I'm with love, with him, for him, but not to take that away from him.
Isn't that
So,
so beautiful? Even
yeah,
we can apply it to anybody, not just our children, but our children probably is closest they have special people always say, okay, if you cross the line of my child, like I will, like there are certain
yeah,
things you activated, there are certain things that are most precious, protective. However, sometimes you think about it, actually, if we could apply this to anybody we encounter in our life, our
yeah,
husband, boyfriend, in-laws, fathers, siblings, or the strangers,
yeah,
if we could invest a little bit more percentage on those people around us, like you were saying, and then I see this beautiful picture of like, wow, the way how we understand, to our kids, how knowing that because we were fighting, like I was 15, 16, I'm fighting against my father because I know he was right. But the thing is, this is my experience to go through that. But you already know what it feels like to do that. I didn't know. I needed this
right,
experience to be putting into my traveling journey so I know what it feels like. That probably can help me to avoid so many different things. But if I skip that one, am I going to fall a big hole that I will not crawl up, right? And I think this
yeah,
is a hardest thing for a lot of parents. But as our generation, when I say our, is the generation we start to do more of inner work, ask questions, have more self awareness, and
exactly.
we can stay in our own lane. But I love what you said. We have more compassion to walk with this soul. It's the hardest thing is to watch people, going to certain paths that but the
Mhm.
other one is that you have to allow it. right? You have to
Exactly.
allow it, and then that's a hard thing. We don't have many minutes, much time left. So my last question is like, do you have any specific messages that are coming through right now for people who are going to watch? Because this episode gonna probably gonna be aired in 2 weeks or so, which is middle June. Um,
Sure.
kind of like, tap into the love frequency, certain messages if you want to deliver. I think it would be perfect time to add on to it.
Sure. Yeah, it kind of ties in to actually my previous conversation about trust. I feel that people are really scared of world
Yeah.
events and what's happening, where is this going to go, and where. And, I feel that there is a lot to be said about trust.
Hmm.
Sometimes we don't really know. Um, we're not privy to all the details, but I truly believe that everything is always happening to the highest goods. I know it. And there is these stories in life that always happen when something, and I could go on forever about it, how something we deem bad ends up being actually very favorable. We
Yeah,
can I'm not a religious person, but there's the story of Joseph and how one thing, a very horrible, something we judge very horrible, actually turned out to save an entire nation.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And
We had
so,
in our culture too. Like actually, we had some intense. That's why we were talking earlier. Like that certain thing happened on our way back. My boyfriend hit a deer.
yeah,
So we don't know what's going on right now. But in my mind, I always have that saying. Just like you said, everything is happening for your highest grace good. However, in Chinese, we have of course, we say that differently. But that things keep in my mind, like a repeat. Like Gina,
yeah,
you do not know because it has not been unfolded yet, but
exactly.
everything is happening for your highest grace good for all the involved. We didn't get hurt or anything. The car is, we don't know whether it's total or not. We don't know. But that
Yeah,
car is also kind of new car, only 7, 8 months old. The car
yeah,
stuff like that. Of course, it's sad to see, but like again, like back to like trust. I don't know what exactly in a week or two something gonna happen, but sometimes you think it's the worst, probably gonna bring something turning on the corner is something best you could never could think of. But
yeah.
also when you are in the highest, do not feel that, oh, I'm the highest because
Mhm.
it's sometimes it take a turn. So I think in our teaching, so the Buddhism, the Taoist is like you always stay like in the middle, allow things to go high and then low, but
Yes,
not being so entangled in it, right? And I
yeah,
think a lot of time we are on the roller coaster, on it goes low, like you don't know when it's a turn. And I think as a humanity, sometimes on the roller coaster right now, right? I don't
yeah,
like roller coaster, first of all. That's why try
yeah.
to center myself, don't get on that roller coasters.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally, this is kind of how my teaching is really, and it can be chimed in all the other teachings around the world, all the philosophies and religions, really to stay to accept, and
Yes,
that
acceptance.
acceptance, a lot of acceptance. We always try to hold on to our victories, and we always like,
Yes.
I
Try
think
to avoid a mistake, right?
exactly. And we always, when something works out, we want it to keep that way. But the thing is,
Mm,
life is always changing. It's a river. And so we
yes.
would learn to accept, 'cause pain is part of life, but to learn how to accept it, accept the highs, accept the lows, and just know they're always moving with the river, that things are always transitioning. We're
Yes.
just always, journeying the journey. And it's not about
Yeah.
getting anywhere, really.
Yes, yes. Well, it's such a beautiful conversation. I feel like we can definitely have a lot of, how to say that, the past we could go deep that.
Yeah.
And I would definitely, invite you to come back for our another episode for that one is more for our personal healing journey. I think I want to dive into certain uh things you've been like that, like like early, like 5 years ago, all the things you went through. I think that's a lot of things that we can unpack and share some wisdom passed on. And also I see something interesting in your profile. You're talking about dreams, right? Reading through dreams. I actually had a nightmare last night.
Yeah.
Like I can witness this my dreams. Sometimes I was like out of space, literally out of spaceship. And yesterday I was literally saw I don't want to say the ghost, but in the dream, it feels like the ghost, like you're just coming over. I'm like, oh, we are not supposed to be here. Let's go outside. And I see tiger. And I was like, I tell my boyfriend all the dreams. I'm like, it's really fascinating because dream brings messages. So I do want to bring you back to talk about dreams, subconscious, things like that. But before we wrap up, I have some questions I ask our, like guests. So kind of fun parts a little bit. But the first one, because when you were talking about love at the beginning, would you or could you use in a very simple way to describe what is love meant to you? Or what is the meaning that you interpret, like in a short version? Because when you were talking about that, I was like, okay, this question I want to ask as an
Yeah,
end. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, to me, connecting to love was actually, people might think, what do I need to do? It's actually not a thought, but it's actually a non-thought. It's non-thinking. And to me, love is when I'm in that frequency, I feel the most trust, safest
Mhm.
space. And it's kind of like, I can describe it as a vacuum, but the most full, richest vacuum there is. And it's full of love. And there is,
Mm,
you know, it's, you're there safe and accepted. And there's nothing that you can do that is going to be, wrong, and there's no right. You're just accepted for who you are, and it just feels safe and trust. And that's why, it kind of helps me to release fear as human,
mhm,
knowing that I'm a part of this, that I will come back to it, to that love. And when I carry that with me, I feel like I can do anything. When
mhm,
I am love, I can do anything. I can let people be who they are. I can let the world be what it is. I can let myself go through physically through, the challenges that we go through in the physical, because I am in love. I am in the love. I am love. I'm an expression of love. And it's this most, it just feels wholesome. It feels like I'm at home, you know?
okay, let's bring home. If you
Yeah.
could use 3 words to describe yourself, what does those 3 words be?
Mm, that's interesting. I think I'm complex.
Mhm.
I am rich, and I am love. I think.
Beautiful. Now, the last question is if you could go back to time, what would you say to the 5 years old, the little Nefrit, right? What you gonna say
Yeah.
to her?
Yep. Yeah. Somebody else asked me lately this question, and I was thinking, oftentimes people live in regret and, oh, I wish I didn't do this. I wish I did that. And I kind of reflect back on my life sometimes, and I had a very tumultuous life, a lot of
Mhm.
hardships, physical, mental. I went through a lot,
Yeah.
but I would not change a thing because I know this
Yeah.
is exactly what I went through. However, I would tell myself um, to not be scared, that it's okay. Everything is okay.
Yeah. You're gonna say, hey, you're gonna go to a roller coaster, but you let you know that you will come
It'll
down
be
in
okay.
one piece. So just let you know there will be some bumps. Just prepare.
Yes,
I'm joking.
exactly.
Well, okay, thank you, Nefri. I think it's such a beautiful conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about a lot of things that
Yeah,
we all went through so much things, right? And how we see the light end of a tunnel is so important, and that's why is the exact reason I have this special series is I want to just not just the love from my heart, and what if we can all come to this stage to share and to bring different aspect of light, the love, and people could take it maybe if they because I always talk things in certain way they already know what I'm gonna say,
yeah,
but each person is very different to talk about love. And I
yeah,
love the way you say love it like a vacuum. When you say that, you say, yeah, you can't fight with it because if you
mm,
suck you in, the more you hold it, you're gonna be more pain and struggle. But if you
yeah,
surrender, you will go to this chamber and you will reunite with
yeah.
whoever, be all there, right? And we never lost,
Right,
so it's kind
right.
of a very beautiful way to describe, but also fun. So I'm not gonna steal that one. Say, hey, once I heard somebody shared that love is like a vacuum. So
Yeah, yeah.
well, thank you so much. Okay, feel
Well,
free to
thank
reach
you,
out.
Gina.
And yes, And thank you guys for tuning in and for this special season or series of for the collective readings. Hope one or two things that we shared here really touch your heart and then you could incorporate in your life. And thank you, Nefrit, for your beautiful, knowledge, wisdom, and your story. It's so
Thank
beautiful.
you for
Thank you.
having me. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.